All right, what's up guys? Winston here over at MoveUp, and we're going to talk about how many short-term rental trucks before it makes more sense to go either buy a truck or go get a long-term lease on a truck. One of the biggest things that's a headache is just wasting money on rentals. They're not going to get any cheaper, and so knowing, at what point do I need to really think about, okay, let's go buy or do a long-term lease. So, and I've learned this from other people, so I didn't make this up, but I just want to make sure that you guys are equipped. So what I've learned is that 11 short-term rentals is the key number, that if you keep seeing that in a month, that's when you need to think about buying or long-term leasing. So that's 11 truck rentals in a month. And the way that you look at that, and maybe your number might be 10 or 12, right, based on your market and how much you spend on short-term rentals, but it's based on, let's say you rent something and it costs you whatever amount of dollars, all right, multiply that out by 10 or 11 or 12, and what's that monthly cost, right? Well, what would be a finance payment on a newer truck? Or what would be your long-term lease payment, right? And if your rental number keeps consistently being more and more and more than what your finance payment or your lease payment would be on a long-term rental, then it's going to make more sense to go that route. The hard part is the seasonality. And so when you're going from, I have a ton of rentals in July, right now we're at the end of the month, but then when we get around to November, you're like, I can barely get the trucks I do own out. And then you just are kind of having trucks sit on the lot that you're paying insurance for, and that feels like it's a little bit of a waste. So not only do you need to look at 11, right, as like a kind of a key number you might want to circle, 11 rentals per month, and that's per rental truck per day. So like if I rent a truck and I'm renting it for, what if you rent a truck for the week? Well, that would count as 7, right? If you did something like that, if you're using it for a job every single one of those days. The other thing though to look at is do a look back. So like, what were your rental costs in the off season a year ago, and then what are you forecasting for this year? That's another piece of the puzzle, because just because you're spending a lot of money on rentals in July doesn't necessarily mean that you buy a truck right now, because you got to remember that here in about 3 months, you're going to slow down a little bit. And maybe you really want to buy that truck or get that long-term lease in like February or March, because maybe that's where you're going to maximize the usage of it. Totally depends. Another factor to think about if you're buying is if you're going to buy the truck, well, if you buy it before the end of the fiscal year, then you're going to be able to have that as a tax write-off for the year. So maybe that makes a lot of sense for your business, especially if you're paying, like, let's say you're paying all of it cash, and let's say you do accelerated depreciation on the truck. Well, that's going to help you out a lot for your taxes. And so it's more than just looking at, well, I'm spending $4,000 in rentals. I could pay $3,000 if I just go get a truck and finance it or whatever. I'm going to save $1,000. That's the first place to look, but I also would look at your off season last year and then what you project for off season this year. And then I would also look at just your tax strategy, and you could consult, your accountant on that. Those would be the handful of things I'm looking at, but the magic number I've heard from a lot of people is 11 short-term truck rentals. If you consistently see that month after month, then it might be directing you in the course of, we need to buy a truck or we need to do a long-term lease. Hope that helps, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.